I'm pleased to be joined by Chris Hampson, Warren Taylor, and Simon Burrows, who seems to have changed his name. There's better. From Royal Kingston and Greater London Southwest. These three guys are experts on the water, both pre-COVID and COVID times. So they're going to do some little presentation, guys. I don't think I can give you control of the screen now because I couldn't log on. So can I just run through your presentations on a shared screen? Chris, is that okay?
That's fine by me, Neil.
Yeah.
Simon's just answering you, but he's muted.
Yeah, Simon's muted.
Chris, are you going first?
Yeah, sure.
Fine. I'll just share your presentation. Hang on.
For a minute. There we go.
Chris, we'll do this like the COVID presentation. Just say next slide and I'll skip through.
Okay. No problem at all. Right, is everybody sitting comfortably? I think it's the first question. Right, okay. I'll take that as a yes. So all I've done is just come up with a few bits and pieces, partly introducing Kingston Scouts.
Sorry, Chris, your volume's a bit hit and miss.
Right. How's that sound now?
That's better.
Right, I'll just move the microphone. Right. Okay, so with Kingston Scouts Canoe Club, what I've intended to do is just to show a few basic bits and pieces how we would normally run and how things have changed and developed during the last year of COVID, which should move us nicely on to some of the bits and pieces that we've ended up doing in the summer, and jointly we'll move on to the guys from Sea Lion. So if we go with next slide, please now. Okay, so all I'm introducing is just the Canoe Club. So we provide a service for Scouts of all ages. It's done in 3 ways. We're going to be having a couple of clicks now, Neil. So if you can click next for me. So it's taster sessions, should be to click next. This enables troops, units, packs, or whatever section you wish to call it. Come along, give it a go, experience fun on the water. You'll see from the picture, that's pretty much the way that a lot of these sessions end up. And that's largely the leaders that end up in that kind of a state. Okay, click next for me, please. Suspense. Click next, Neil.
I think my laptop's running a bit slow at the moment.
That's okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so the next part of what we do is provide beginner and intermediate courses, 6-week period for each course, just introducing canoeing. Now that's something that we open up to all troops primarily, but again, all Scouts can come down for these. And it's just something where there's a chance for them to work through some of their paddle awards, and also working on some of the national governing body qualifications for the kids that are coming down.
Chris, can I just add a bit on there that you've also used that to help young people that are doing GCSE PE and sport?
Yes, of course you can. So that's a little bit of a mix actually with us in the next one. If you click next for me, Neil, and I'll mention that.
There
So
you go.
one of the things that we do is, well, the third thing we do is we do a club membership, and youngsters are just allowed to come on down, and they can. Let me just see if I can click away a little bit. There we go. They can come on down. They've got a club environment. We can develop their skill sets. Now, between the courses and the club membership, there's quite a close link between the two, and that's exactly as Neil mentions about things like GCSE. They'll get a section in their GCSE where they're expected to come for a certain number of weeks or for hours on the water. It's usually measured. Certain skill levels that they'll be expected, or certain improvements from where they are to where they end up. And there's a bit of a crossover between that and the courses, because they can pretty much cover that within a 6-week course. What happens an awful lot is that there's such a mishmash between those two. Quite often we'll have groups which are combined. What we very often get is somebody will come down, book on a 6-week course, and we just make it a very easy up on the money for the finances. So don't quote me quite on anything, because things may well change, but previously what we've done is charge something like £25 for a course and £45 for a whole summer's worth of membership, where they just come down for as many sessions as they like. We run between April and September usually. What we'll end up doing is somebody's booked paid £25 for a course. They'll come on down. They'll say, how can we carry on coming down? And we'll just up their payment to up to their payment by an extra £20 to the full 45 for the club membership. It's just done simply. One of the main things with the club is we don't aim to make any money. We quite often will run at some kind of a loss. The idea is purely just to give the youngsters a chance to be able to come down and experiment and try something that that they'd like to have a go at. We don't want people not being able to come down purely on a monetary basis. It can be a very expensive sport, and what we're able to do is provide that cheaply for them, so they can come on down. They can go over a whole year's of club membership. They can either do things that they wish to do within their own Scouts badges, GCSE, or national governing body qualifications, and that's combined somewhere between the courses and the club membership. So, sorry, down the bottom, it's a little bit difficult to read. I really should rethink that slide slightly. So the club environment, we're populated by a mix of people who, so we'll have a troop come down, they'll have done a taster session, and then they'll say, well, actually, we really enjoyed this. How do we carry on coming down? We'll have some who, through their troop, have heard about a course, come on down to do a beginner or intermediate course where they simply want to do one of their canoeing badges for Scouts. And then we get some perennials who will come back year on year. And this is how we end up populating the club environment. There's no actual input out to people that just want to come down for the club itself. That just seems to populate itself. So there's our normal operations. Next slide, please. This should save you a little bit of clicking, Neil. It's not really too much. So during COVID 2020, so the last year, restrictions that we've had meant that our normal feed just hasn't been there. A lot of troops have just not been able to meet, and therefore we're not going to be able to advertise. We're not going to be able to put stuff out there for people. Even when restrictions were marginally lifted, a lot of groups were barely struggling to be able to run their normal activities. And Neil, if you can just give me one click, please. And I've said here, virtual canoeing really didn't quite catch on. It didn't seem very much exercise. This was a video, but I'm sure you've all seen the, I can't remember if it's Wii or Game Boy or something that's that. So we've not opened our doors for 2020. However, big however down the bottom. Next slide, please. What we have found is over the years, we've always had an open to all Scouts policy. Now that means that adult supporters, now that could be parents, it could be Scout leaders, instructors, for pioneering perhaps, who've just said, actually, I just want to expand on my skills, or I've always really enjoyed canoeing. How do I just come down? We have a bit of a policy where we don't charge for adults. Adults come on down. The proviso is that the young people take priority. So you may well come down and you may well help to launch some of the young people in their boats. You may well sit on the water and sit in on a session. You may well even be asked to, can you just watch these three while I perform this rescue or whatever it is that we end up doing. So there'll be an instructor with the group, and an adult would have come along as well. And then by the end of the evening, those adults may well end up just putting their boats on a rack. I'll carry on while you're going. So they may well end up putting their boats on the rack, and they've done absolutely helping the kids put their boats on the racks as well. It's often quite a heavy duty bit. So you can see the adults don't necessarily always get some training, but it's a way that we open it up so that they can always come on down. So you're able to click for me now. Dying a bit of deaf on the laptop, isn't it?
Got it.
Neil, should we just go with the old-fashioned way? If you can just click slide 4 for me, I think it's fairly clear on people's screens. Do shout if you're having trouble with it. I did do big letters.
You got that?
Yeah, that's fine. So that's our policy for adults. That's given them the opportunity to improve their personal paddling. A lot of the adults that we get coming down are permit holders, or they're working up to getting a permit. We'll also encourage them and try to help build opportunities for them to do national governing body qualifications.
Chris, what various permits do you have available there?
Largely it is canoe and kayak.
Okay, thanks.
So that's meant that over the last year, we've been able to provide quite an agile coaching service. While the young people have not been able to come down, and our membership and our user base has not really been there, it does mean that we've got quite a good team of adults that we've been able to use and put out into different areas. Now, part of that has been, for me, has been a little bit of managing on the part of the adult side of the club as it's started to become. So I have been able to do a couple of little trips and bits and pieces for the adults, literally just to keep that interest there and to try and retain them, to be very honest. We don't want people that are sort of saying, well, we're not really doing very much, there's no point in coming on down anymore. So as you can see, as people have come through the club, particularly the adults, but also some of the older explorers that have worked their way up to either permit holder or to a full national governing body qualification, they've gone through paddle skills loading, as you can see, and they've gone on through. Now that's meant that we've been able to, this year, take on some of our skills to Ravensay Island, where Sea Lion are based, where they've had a need for some of our services. If we can go next slide, please. Okay, and just a quick montage of some of the bits and pieces that we've been able to do over the summer with Sea Lion. I will let them do the discussions on how they've had to work with the groups. Certainly, we've not been able to turn around and say, we'll send our whole team down. There are restrictions on numbers. So just a quick smattering of some of the bits and pieces that we've been able to do. And it should be next slide. So looking to the future, or going back to the future. Yes, we are likely to have a new normal. You can see even our logo, top right hand side, Kingston Scouts Canoe Club within COVID. And you know, I think this is something that is here to stay for quite some time. Hopefully there's an end to it and we can get back to much more of the normal that we've all come to expect. However, we are in a position where over the next year we can look to bringing a service to groups. Sea Line's a clear example of that, and they've been very welcome hosts for us as well. It's clearly a way we can enable a section to get out on the water. We'd also like to be able to provide an environment where jointly run club activities, so we may well have the canoe club and a scout troop or group, or any other section coming down, and it enables individuals to be able to come along and enjoy the things that we do and encourage within an environment that's going to be safe and something that can be quite closely monitored with both numbers and risk assessments within the COVID environment. So that's pretty much all from me. You should find next slide, Neil. Should just click us to the end. That's it. Good. Okay, it's always nice when things go in the way that you were planning them to. So what we'll find with this is that this should tie in fairly nicely to what the guys from Sea Lion will present to you. But just before we launch in with their bit for them, has anybody got any questions with some of the bits and pieces that we've got there?
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering. I'm a GSL with a Sea Scout troop, and it's just thinking about how you deal with the COVID under the amber regulations. If we get back to there, with your 15 groups and that, and social isolating, I wonder how you've done your risk assessments for paddle sports in that.
Okay,
that might be better answered by our presentation, actually.
Exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Shall we run your presentation first, Simon, and then we'll pick up questions across the board then?
Yeah, great.
Can you see that?
No.
I can see all of you.
Doesn't show.
Not yet.
Are you not able to enable share screen?
No, because I don't have the login for this.
I think it's starting.
There we go.
Okay. Right, well, I got a short presentation about Sea Lion and how we work this year. There's a bit of background to our group and so on. So if I can say for the first time, next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so I started off with a couple of photographs about us. The water side of what we do is a massive part of what we do, but it is only sort of half the year because we're only able to do it in the summer months. So although we did carry on right until October this year. Next slide, please, Neil. So who is Sea Lion? We've been established, we're an old group, we've been established since 1909. We are Royal Navy recognised. For people that don't know what that means, it demands high levels of training, organisation and standards. And in return, there's some kudos in the fact that we're one of 101 groups in the UK and Gibraltar who are recognised by the Royal Navy. It gives us some training provision, it provides some activities and the Royal Navy's facilities. And best of all, it provides some grant funding, which we've probably had about £10,000 worth of funding from them in the past couple of years. So on. So we've got 2 beaver colonies, 2 cub packs, a scout troop, which is split into 2 watches, just to enable us to work with numbers, and an explorer unit, which numbers about 45 to 50 at the moment. We've got 205 active members and about 50 to 60 or more leaders and helpers. We've got a very active and supportive executive, which has really helped us develop over the past 15 to 20 years. Sadly, we have a large waiting list, and sadly, again, many will not be offered a place from that waiting list. Our waiting list numbers about 200 children, so difficult to cope with, but we do have an open door policy. We don't close the waiting list. and we do take from that, but it's more the younger children under beaver age will be offered a place. We rarely offer places above that age. Okay, I'm sure there'll be some questions there. Next slide, please, Neil. So this is a brief glimpse of our water activity base on the Thames at Surbiton. We rent this. It's a wedding venue otherwise. Parts of it are quite derelict, but the part we use, we've invested quite a lot of money and time into making it usable and safe and working for our kids. As you see in the front of the island, you can see our safety boats that we've, our fleet of safety boats, and some photographs of them later. We're also lucky enough to have a very fully equipped group-owned HQ in central Surbiton. All right, next slide, please. So how did we arrive here? Because it's been a long time coming, and you can see we've invested a huge amount of money in to get here. Over the past 15 to 20 years, there's been lots of planning, lots of mistakes, and learning from those mistakes and building. We've completely renewed our safety boat fleet. It includes a RIB. The Whaleys are smaller safety boats that we use, and some of this was paid for with RN grants, otherwise with group funds. Lots of money. 15 to 20 years ago, we were a group that, although we were boating, and we've been boating since the 70s, a lot of the stuff, the kit we used was secondhand, hand-me-downs, offered to the group because nobody else had a use for it. And so we've spent £20,000 renewing all our kayaking fleet and our canoe fleet. The dinghies and gigs that our scouts use are very old. Warren's going to talk about those in a second as a separate part of this, but there's they're very old boats, and you'll see they take a lot of repair and a lot of keeping on the water. We also have sailing boats, and we've spent money on upgrading Ravens 8. We have ongoing costs running every year, and not forgetting, and I don't need to remind you lot about this, the amount of volunteering time it takes to keep all this up and running. All right, next slide, please, Neil. So what challenges Sea Line? The training for leaders. That's our leaders to be on the water with kids. We have a powerboat level 2 license to keep, and that enables us to use the powerboat. You can see Warren in our brand new RIB there. We also undertake safety boat training and to enable us to have adventurous activity permits and for powerboating and so on. The safety boat is not actually a qualification we require, but it really is something that that drums home the safety needed on the river and using the river. Okay, so adventurous activity permits. We have permits within the group for long canal boating, for canoeing and kayaking, for power boating, for sailing, you name it, we've got water permits for it. And the permits, the way of getting the permits is very well run, and Chris runs that for us, so I won't have a word said against that. But the kayaking permits have been a real challenge for us in getting enough permits and getting enough leaders on the water, because a kayaking permit is not something you can say, I want a kayaking permit, I can be safe, and a couple of weekends later you've got a permit. It takes an awful lot of investment of time and training and skill. I challenged myself a couple of years ago to get myself a permit, and I still wonder whether someone of my age, and it's hard to believe, I am in my 50s, to get a canoeing permit. But Chris has told me, not yesterday, that he's going to take it as a challenge and make sure I've got a permit before the year is out. So permits are a big challenge for us, and this year in COVID, that was where Chris and the Canoe Club really came up trumps and made sure we got lots and lots of kids on the water. Our issues, we do have some issues with Ravens 8 as an island base, but I won't go into the details of those, but it's a difficult relationship we have with the island. All right. Next slide, please, Neil. So activities through COVID, we were very quick to get up and running, and we did run our first session on July the 17th. And we were running sessions right up until the almost the end of October. We were running sessions first of all on a Friday evening, and then due to the restrictions of the risk assessments, we couldn't have the same leaders running sessions on the same day. So we started running sessions on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday over the session. That did lax, and things changed. You could run the same sessions on the same day. So we were running, and right up until in October, we were running Saturday afternoon sessions for the Scouts, so that we made sure we had good lighting and so on. The risk assessments I'll go through in a little bit more detail in a second. So we managed to get all of our Scouts on the water through COVID. That's we had a very sort of strict way of getting them on the water, and the risk assessment made sure that we adhered to all of that going right the way through. Depending on their age and experience, the Scouts achieved paddle sports level 3. Some of the more experienced ones were up to level 3. And that really is a really high level of kayaking. We really saw a massive difference in the ability of our Scouts and their kayaking. And they really are, some of them really very, very skilled now. Next slide, please, Neil. So the risk assessment was, first of all, put together with help from other Sea Scout groups. We've got a good relationship with Warspite, who are just up the river from us, and with one of their leaders who had already put together their risk assessment. In the best way possible, we took it and we copied it and we worked with it, and then we submitted it. So that was submitted and approved quite quickly. The team and Royal Kingston really worked very well to keep risk assessments approved very quickly. I was getting turned around within 24 hours most of the time. Kayaking is quite a perfect, almost perfect, for COVID. It's naturally distanced. You're in a kayak on your own. You're in the open air. And with the exception of rescue of kids when they come out of that kayak, it really is a very good way of scouting within COVID. OSM really came into its own. We were sending out invites via OSM. The numbers wise, we could the numbers were very low to begin with, but we could have up to 15 Scouts by the end of the sessions. And that meant we could send invites out to specific groups, so age-wise or ability-wise. We could also control whether or not a Scout had whether a Scout had kayaked the previous week, or and so on. So keeping everything fair, but that meant that the invites were very controlled. We could also sort of at the last minute send invites out to others, so that we made sure we had 15 in the group and so on. This went on to keep the attendance, and we were able to see who had attended when, and that worked very well with contact tracing. And also we were able to, the parents were able to give permission for them to be at that kayaking session, all through OSM, all electronically. And working with OSM means that we could take a register on the riverbank and get over to the island and get kayaking really quickly. The contact tracing, we didn't have any issues brought to our attention about any problems. So we didn't actually have to put into place any contact tracing. But right now I could go into OSM and tell you who was kayaking on a particular day, on a particular session, which leaders were there, and all the names of the kids that were there. So the kayaking in itself ended up with a lot of cleaning between sessions, before and after sessions. The boats were laid out ready for the kids to get on the water, and we had a session with them where they would sanitize their boat and all the touch points. The buoyancy aids worked very well. We color coded all of our buoyancy aids. So in the original risk assessment, we were cleaning all the buoyancy aids every time we used them. dipping in sanitizer. There was a bit of a worry that this might rot the equipment, and what we did was end up color coding all the buoyancy aids so that there was a full week between any one buoyancy aid being used by another child. So this really, was a way we were adapting the risk assessment and working our way along with it. The benefits for the scouts and the leaders were huge. For the scouts, some of the emails I got from parents about the activity that their kids were able to be a part of, where other scouts weren't doing anything or just Zoom meetings and so on, but our scouts were out on the water. It was very visible. The parents were able to come down and sit there and watch watch the sessions, which gave them something to do. The leaders, for me, definitely, I wasn't working that much through the early part of lockdown, and it gave some real structure to my week, and I know helped out a lot of our leaders with how they were feeling about going through COVID. Okay, next slide, please.
I think that's it.
That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, the question would be, how do I get a copy of your risk assessment so I can look at it?
Is that Stephen? I can send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great, because yeah, it's nice to see fellow Royal Navy people.
Is it something you want to get?
Yeah, well, basically we're in Epping Forest South, the 4th and the 36th, with both Sea Scout groups. But the trouble we've got is that we don't have our own kit, so we go through a local authority activity centre is how we run our summer sessions, and of course they've all been closed down. But I'm thinking, well, I've got enough kayaks, and because I've got a permit that I can take 8 out, you could at least take a patrol out at a time, kayaking on the river that we could use. So it was just thinking then, but I hadn't got as far as, if we get back up to amber, how do you do that in groups of 15, and what's the, what extra equipment might we need to purchase to get that ready for amber?
You could always bring them to Surbiton. We've got the risk assessment ready to go. And, the permit holders and so on. You bring your own permit holders with you. The kit that we needed was, we didn't really need any extra kit. There was lots of sanitizer and buckets to dunk stuff in and so on. But the risk assessment just worked very well. We were taking kids, we're an island, so we were taking kids onto the island on a boat. They were social distanced on that boat. They were sanitizing their hands before they came over to the island. There were various sort of registers taken on the riverbank ready to go. We got them over, and we closed our changing rooms. The best way to deal with risk assessments, I always find, is to take out any risk. And so we closed the changing rooms we have and just asked the parents to send them ready to go. They were ready to go, and they were warned that the children might turn up wet and to collect them on the riverbank 2 hours later with a towel, something to wrap them in, and they might be getting into your car wet. We just warned them of all those sort of things. But sometimes that was how it worked, and they did turn up wet. But that enabled us to just take out the risk assessment, take out the changing rooms out of the risk assessment, and manage it very much more easily for ourselves. Also, things like toilets. They were told there are no toilets. Toilets are not available unless it's an emergency. And I don't know, Warren, I can't remember anyone using a toilet.
No, we did have the same, but that we were on a although we couldn't get on water activities, we had them outside doing all our activities in the dark, which was interesting, during the amber period. And then again, the place we were, there wasn't a toilet, so it was just turn up and hold it. Or there's a bush over there if you're really desperate.
I mean, there was lots of thinking about things like that. Drinks wise, there weren't drinks available for them. They were all told to bring a water bottle with their name on it, so that there was no sharing of water bottles and so on. So lots of it is very straightforward. With any risk assessment, you work through what you're going to do and what are the risks and how do we mitigate those risks. And best way.
My scout section leader has done a wonderful job and produced a complete they're the first ones in the district that got it through all their risk assessments for face-to-face and amber. So we've got basically all the stuff of the water bottles, the signing them in procedure, the sanitising them as they come on, and all that kind of stuff. It was just thinking through the. I mean, as a kayak coach, the thought was, well, how do you do the risk assessment for? They invariably capsize themselves, umpteen to a dozen. Normally, when you take scouts out, and it's just dealing with that rescue situation and how you're rescuing them under the COVID.
Yeah, so we did think about that, and that's one thing you can't just sort of pull a child out of the water because you're not keeping your distance there. Obviously, if there was an emergency, everything goes out the window.
Yeah.
But when you're just taking a child out of the water, we bought a relatively cheap ladder that went over the side of the powerboat so that they could climb back in. We're also a river. So there is a bank close by, and there was, lots of the kids actually learnt that if they capsize, they're going to have to swim with their boat to the bank side. They're going to have to, break the seal on the top of the kayak if anyone's done this before, and it's quite a difficult thing to do to get the water out of it, and they're going to get back into the water. We did limit the kids that we could take, the scouts we could take on their parents knowing that their swimming level of swimming ability needed to be good enough to swim to the side if they needed it. We ask. We sort of have an in the water or an on the water way of working. So we've got the gigs and the dinghies where kids will be on the water. And if their swimming ability for us if they can't swim 50 meters unaided, then they'll be on the water in a gig or a kayak, a gig or a dinghy.
Yeah.
If they can swim 50 meters in the water unaided, then we're quite happy to have them in a kayak or a canoe and so on. And that, although we can have them as part of we can have them with lesser ability during COVID, due to the numbers of leaders we had, and due to that, we kept that as quite a strict rule.
Yeah.
Stephen, I think from what Simon was saying and from what we experienced over the summer, it is one of the main differences to normality. As any kind of kayak coach, you'd expect to be able to deal with the situation on the water without the assistance of a rescue boat. And to be very honest, it's something that's almost annoyed me over the years where there have been organizations which insist on, oh, well, we're going to have a rescue boat there as well. And, we're prepared to be able to cater for this.
We rescue each other,
Exactly, yeah. We're trained to be able to cope with this. But it was one of the main things. And one of the key areas, Simon touched on the fact that they got the ladder so that they could make it easier for a young person to climb into the safety boat. It also meant that there could be an element of social distancing within the safety boat. So you could have the safety boat driver would stay in position, just lower the ladder over the side, and that's it. There's no actual contact between the two of them. That's one of the main things that they had within the risk assessment.
I guess strictly speaking, actually, we didn't have safety boats because a safety boat needs to be manned by 2 people. And due to social distancing, we didn't have 2 people in the safety boat. We had 1 person in that boat and so on. But we don't have, as Chris says, we don't have to have a safety boat for them to be kayaking. So we had a boat which was a safety boat close by.
Yeah, there's also with touching on that, Frank, with the 2 people, I think it's 2 people, but we also wanted to minimise the amount of touch points because the 1 person that was in charge of that boat would also have to be in charge of cleaning as well. So we assigned the boat to the person so we could register who was in that boat at that time and who has actually been in the boat, so we could actually do the cleaning and everything else. So it was merely as a precaution. We know pretty well Chris and his team on a Wednesday were totally experienced and everything else. It's more a case of numbers and experience, and we just wanted to cover all bases with her. It didn't need to be there, but it was.
Guys, I've got your video.
Sorry if I changing the subject slide.
Go on, Martin.
Sorry if I trying to change the subject slightly, because I'm a member of Kingston Scouts, and this is London and water activity, and everything I heard about was Kingston, and I know Chris, and I know Sea Lion very well. Is there any other water activities available in London alongside the Thames or something? Is there anybody doing sailing, for example, or anything, other units you are aware of, or any other activities London is offering on the water? Because that would actually widen my horizon rather than getting more information about Kingston.
Well,
Sea Lion, we do sail, but during COVID, we weren't able to.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm looking into the new normal again then.
Right, Martin, if I don't know if you heard of a little bit out, is the Dockland project in Canary Wharf. They are actually a water activity centre, and they do pull-in, sailing and boat courses. Throughout COVID, I believe they've been closed, but it's the Dockland Scout project in Canary Wharf. I know we've had a couple of our leaders go down there to do their pull-in permits in the past. So that would be one for you to try.
Thank you, Leo.
They are closed at the moment, but yeah, that would be the place to go for permits as well.
Yeah, at the moment we are locked down anyway, so I hear you. Yeah.
I think even when we get to amber, I don't know whether they'll be operating again. But,
just talking on what Frank was saying earlier, that we've concentrated.
Martin, there's also Hillingdon Narrowboat Association.
Narrowboat Association, and where are they based?
Yeah, Hillingdon Narrowboat Association, which is strongly linked to scouting, which is based at Harefield, near Uxbridge. They run about 6 12-berth narrowboats at very economic rates. But of course, COVID's knocked that on the head for the moment.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Also, Martin, talking about narrowboats, there is a company called Driftwood, and they're based in Wiley.
I think I heard about those. Yeah.
That's
Driftwood. Yeah.
Paul Green. Sorry.
Paul Green.
Yeah, just to touch on what Frank was saying about our program throughout this summer period. We've only touched on really the fact that we've been working on kayaks and open canoes. Generally, we try and we have a fleet of gigs which are X amount of hundreds of years old, near enough. Robin knows them quite well. We generally try and do that, but as COVID's been in place, as it's an enclosed environment, we generally have 5 in a gig, 5 people running a gig. We haven't been able to do that, which is us quite well in the sense that we haven't been able to get the same number of young people on the water doing the different activities we normally would do throughout a summer period with the kayaking and rowing. So in a sense, with COVID, I think we've managed to perform and do a remarkable job to get the number of young people out on the water. Chris on a Wednesday with our Explorer unit, Martin, I believe, and he's had up to 15 young people out on the water every week, and we've covered nearly up to 30 to 45 young scouts on a Friday and a Saturday period. Normally, we wouldn't actually be able to cover that amount of people in 1 week, but we have, but on a very restricted program, which normally we'd have the rowing and everything else. I just want you guys to be aware that it's not just a kayaking where what we do all the other different activities. They do pick opening skills, basic skills, just so they've got a sense of this is what you don't do, this is what you do, this is the same way. And just so they've got it in their heads in the future. I personally am looking at, it would have been this year or last year, I was going for my PBI, which is the powerboat instructors, to enable us to teach some of the explorers a powerboat skill to get them up to a level so they can go and get their powerboat level 2. it gives them a great sense of achievement, to be honest. And I think if they're walking out of it and going, well, I can do this now, it's all good, which unfortunately COVID has stopped. But we will be in the future looking forward to putting more younger people through some qualifications to actually achieve what they need to. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think within
sorry.
Okay. I think we've mentioned on sailing and dinghy sailing in particular. I think you could have a natural progression using the same risk assessments and a lot of the same safety cover provided. You could bring into dinghy sailing. I think one of the main reasons that kayaking and canoeing have dominated is simply the prep of the boat. You're in a position where, because of the touch points and the number of people touching the boat is kept to an absolute minimum. With a kayak, it's one person, they pick it up, take it and put it on the water. With a canoe, that also lends itself reasonably to social distancing, and you can have pairs of people in the canoe. Certainly over the summer and the amber period is when we were in the stage of getting down to the 1 meter plus social distancing that they were talking about, and using people facing the same direction rather than facing each other, and there was a lot of movement with that, and the open canoes lent themselves to that quite well. With dinghy sailing, you've got the whole thing of getting a dinghy ready, getting the sail rigged before you're even at a stage of getting on the water. So once you're at the stage of getting on the water, a very similar risk assessment would carry forward. It's just that prep stage, and obviously the dismantling at the end of a session, and just trying to go for the easier options and the easy wins.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at SUPs as being an easy win possibly to start off with, because there wasn't the entrapment issues, there weren't the emptying issues. It was just you fall off, climb back on. So
yeah, it's certainly something we can possibly discuss, Stephen, actually, is the Canoe Club's got a set of SUPs that are obviously a lot more transportable when they're not inflated. And that's something that does lend itself well. I think I did my cross training across to SUPs as well. Part of my coaching qualifications, I've ended up doing the training part for SUPs as well. One of the main things, although the entrapments go down, I think one of the main things to remember with that is the way in which they launch and the potential for head injuries as they launch off the bank, and making sure that they actually launch themselves from a kneeling position.
Yes, and there's also the hypothermia is a lot worse in those because they're out exposed a lot more. So there's that to watch for, isn't there, with SUPs?
Yeah, you're limited in your season to a lot more with that possibility until they get the hang of it. But
yeah,
they're scouts. They will get wet.
Yeah, so that's what I say to mine when they complain about being wet. I said, if you don't want to be wet, don't be a sea scout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand-up paddle boards. We invested in a couple of years ago by grant. We actually put forward, and the group agreed that we were going to purchase some more mid-season this year and vary our activities. But actually, unfortunately, the high demand in paddleboards, we were unable to actually purchase them. But we will actually still move forward with these to actually have a fleet of 10 paddleboards, stand-up paddleboards. So we are actually to vary our program throughout a winter period as well. Summer period. So we are beginning this year looking at the purchase of another 7 paddleboards, bring our fleet up to enable a permit holder to take out a group of young people on stand-up paddleboard. Obviously, due to COVID, we were unable to facilitate that last
year. Yeah.
When you say,
sorry.
When you say paddleboard, I've seen. I think that was, I don't know, that was Sea Line. That they replaced the paddles with lacrosse clubs, and they were playing lacrosse on the paddleboard. I think next to Ravenade Island. I think that was a brilliant idea, just to spice up the paddleboarding.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been some of our
Sorry, who?
Some of our younger leaders who we found that it's not just the scouts that benefit from this. We found that some of our leaders needed that time as well to go out and, in a sense, release. So as a group, along with the GSL, we agreed that out of a normal scout activity, they were able to use the equipment sensibly, of course, and following government guidelines, which enabled them to do some more water activities on their own under government guidelines. We were very strict about that, and I think that's probably the time you were talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we were thinking anyway as a group of because we've done the last time we were out in the last summer camp we were able to run. We were still running things like running camps. We were up in Norfolk, and the site we were on had paddle boards, and we used them then under my permit, and actually the kids got a lot out of it. So we were thinking ourselves of actually investing. We've got some kayaks. We were thinking of investing in some paddle boards. Yeah.
Well, even to touch on that, it was only by the fact that we one of our leaders got a that Petchy grant for 700 and we looked into, do you want to do an activity for the day, and then just only those kids experience that day, and the future younger people wouldn't be able to experience. So we looked into it, and it actually came up with the idea of let's get 3 paddle boards. So we can get them cheaper ones if need be. They can be run under a kayak permit, which is another permit people can hold off. And we used those 3 to actually, in a sense, test how it would work with the young people, and they loved them, which is why when COVID came in, we looked at straight away how can we improve things, like by some more paddleboards, and unfortunately we were unable. It's a high demand of everyone else doing their hourly exercise.
I mean, what worked really well as well in the post-COVID world was the with the Royal Navy scheme. They bought a couple of the really big ones. You can get about 10 people on, and we did some really fun activities with those down. Because obviously, I used to go down and run the big camps down in Portsmouth. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to those now with the Royal Navy scheme. But we use those with youngsters. They work very well as well. We had 2 of those, and we put 10 on each and play games, and they worked really well.
Guys, we're out of time now, so I can allow you to go off and get a coffee break before the next session starts at 12. Thank you to Chris, Simon and Warren for your time this morning and your expertise.